Okay, will the World Club Challenge be played in Las Vegas in the future? I think it will, and there's a few reasons why I think it will. During the doubleheader this year, RFL and Super League executives were seen talking with Abdo and Volandis, and meetings were held. They did not deny meetings were held. They held meetings with them, and that's where the NRL buying Super League story got leaked out, or being interested in and considering it. And then the World Club Challenge idea of being played in Vegas leaked out. These were reported in the mainstream press. They were also, it went wildfire on social media with people giving their pros and cons views on this. And there were some big personalities within the world of rugby league on the radio, on podcasts, having a good discussion, and on TV, who weren't in the newspaper business discussing it. So this discussion's been going on since the doubleheader weekend took place. 5,000 fans from the UK and about 1,000 fans from France travelled over. So fan travel was not going to be an issue. They were willing to buy tickets and rent and buy, stay in hotels and buy into the whole week. A lot of them went for the whole week, not just the weekend. So they travelled over in large numbers. It's not cheap to travel from Europe to the US. I'm assuming it's not cheap to travel from the US from Australia or New Zealand either, but they travelled in good numbers considering no English teams or French teams were playing. And then we're going to have a talk about what could potentially happen next year or the year after. High chance of Penrith, for example, winning the NRL Grand Final. High chance of the Warriors winning the NRL Grand Final. Now, next year, the NRL champions will be playing the World Club Challenge at home. So that changes the discussion. But 2 years' time, they'll be playing over in Europe. So, hypothetically, if, say, Penrith don't win this year but win next year, but they're one of the teams penciled in, or the Warriors, or the Storm, or the Raiders, these are the teams that have been rumoured to be penciled in for the doubleheader next year. But let's say the year after, another team wins. But we'll use Penrith. Let's say it's in 2 years' time, Penrith are penciled in. And they're penciled in to play the Vegas doubleheader. But they win the season before. Here's the problem. When Penrith went over to play Wigan at the beginning of this year in the World Club Challenge at the end of February, on February the 24th, they had a good 10 days, 8-10 days in England. They spent, they obviously travelled from Australia, initially get over that jet lag, acclimatise because it's colder conditions, and then they had to find a training base. They decided to use Manchester as their training base. I believe it was Old Trafford that they trained on, or used Carrington training ground. So they decided to base themselves in Greater Manchester. Wigan's part of Greater Manchester. Use, I think it was Manchester United's training facilities. Then they do their media commitments as well. They had a lot of media commitments. Then they play the game against Wigan at the DW. And then they've got to travel back to Australia. Now, the following week, the doubleheader took place. So you've got to imagine this. Okay? Aussie or Kiwi team plays in the World Cup Challenge away. Let's say that's what happens in 2 years' time, hypothetically. Then they've got to travel from the UK over to Vegas and do the whole preparation again, where they've got to go to a training base, hotel space, media commitments, and then they've got to play a competitive rugby league match, and then they've got to travel back to Australia. A lot of logistics and a lot of moving parts involved in that, and multiple continents, 3 continents to be exact. That would put that team at a disadvantage to put the fittest, best team on the field because of the turnaround. And the other teams have more of an advantage because they spent that little bit more time in Las Vegas. We'll spend, let's say, 10 days over in North America, a bit more time in Vegas. The other team would have spent, 5.5, 6, because they spent at least 3 days travelling in total from when they leave Australia, go over to the UK and come back. That's a lot of travel. There's a lot of stopovers. It's not necessarily all direct flights. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot of different visas you've got to get as well. A lot of paperwork you've got to fill in. There's all that and a lot of travel. And it will have an impact on the products you put on the field. So that's why I think, with all these meetings that have been held between the Super League executives, RFL executives and the NRL, and the talk around the NRL buying or investing in the Super League, this World Club Challenge conversation has popped up. I think it makes a lot of sense financially and commercially for both the NRL and Super League, because then you're saying to the American audience, not only are we bringing the best of Australia and New Zealand, we're bringing the best of Europe. These are the champions of the European competition playing our champions. And then you've got some of the best of the rest going toe to toe. The games in the doubleheader were played at Origin intensity. The Sea Eagles Rabbitohs game was fantastic. The attacking play was brilliant, but some of the defence was pretty fierce. The Roosters Broncos game was more defensive, but again, some of the stuff that Joey Manu, that back of the hour pass was ridiculous. That was, again, but still played at that same brutal Origin level and in international level intensity. Then you've got that kind of Anglo-Aussie rivalry when it comes not just to rugby league, but also rugby union and cricket. There's always that little bit of friendly rivalry that can spill over a little bit. And we've seen in the last two World Club Challenges that, Penrith have lost. And that adds to the Super League, NRL, which league's better debate, because the best team in Australia has lost the last two World Club Challenge games. Overall, I think the NRL, week in, week out, is far the better league, more competitive. Just look at the results this weekend, how close the majority of those results were. 2 games going to Golden Point, which was fantastic. I don't think that's ever happened on a weekend before. That 2 of the 8 games, it's 1 in 4 of the games went to Golden Point. I mean, very few blowout scores this weekend. Most games were within 8 points of each other. There were 3 games that blew out, but most of the games were within 7 points, should I say. So a lot of close games this weekend. You don't get that in the Super League. There's about 3 or 4 teams at the start of the season you can go could potentially make the Super League Grand Final. Here we have a lot of teams that could potentially make the Grand Final at the moment. No one team is really standing out. Penrith have looked human. No real team is standing out at the moment to me. So you could then market that. The best of the NRL against the best of the Super League. Marketing, if they do it right, could be brilliant. And the Super League, that's something they desperately need. They need investment, that talk of the NRL buying them. The meetings that have been had, I mean, the Super League's got a lot of problems at the moment. The IMG grading system's a mess, we all know this. The TV viewership is better, I think, with that free-to-air deal, but not every club benefits from that. There's 3 Super League clubs that have no free-to-air games this season, which is just not acceptable with a bigger TV package, and that's just not good enough at all. In my opinion, there's more live games on free-to-air TV than there are clubs in the league. 3 of them don't get any coverage unless another team appears in the Challenge Cup again. The TV deal is not worth a lot of money. It's actually worth less money than the last one. They need an injection of cash from somewhere, and putting their best of the best against the NRL's best of the best on top of the NRL doubleheader, to me, is a money-making dream. It's a company's dream as well from an advertising point of view, because you've got that extra game. You get that extra TV time on a mainstream North American network, which will be Fox. And hopefully they do organise that a little bit better than what happened in Game 1, where the first 15 minutes was on Fox Sports 2 rather than Fox Sports 1, which I think did impact the viewership a little bit. But, I think it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer in the long run. And Super League, on their end, does need the interest, a growing interest. It does need the money. And if it does get anything out of this, and potentially a better overseas TV deal, that helps with the revenue share. That helps with the income coming into the game. And the talk of the NRL buying the Super League, there's no smoke without fire. The NRL hasn't denied this, by the way. The NRL hasn't denied it. The NRL hasn't denied wanting to play or organise the World Cup Challenge in Las Vegas. There's no smoke without fire, no denial. I wouldn't be surprised if at the announcement of the teams for next season, they mention this, and they will mention a reserve backup team should one of the 4 teams that is announced not be able to play because of the World Club Challenge. It's all logistics. They even admitted that if a club wins the World Club Challenge, that's one of the 4, we're going to have to find a replacement at shorter notice, and they want to announce these teams as early as possible in the season, potentially during the Origin period, when teams have bye weeks, and it's potentially at that point in the season or just after Origin. That's when they potentially go, these are the teams we want to go with. So there we go. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. I've waited a few weeks since the Vegas doubleheader to do this, but I do think there are a lot of reasons why it makes a lot of logical sense. On a logistical standpoint, the fans are willing to travel. That was proven during the doubleheader from both Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. That was proven with the amount of fans that travelled from all over the world to go. It wasn't just the traditional markets. There were fans from 28 different countries of origin. Not necessarily nationality, they could all be expats, but 28 different countries. Rugby League clearly has a fan base. Travelled. There were a lot of Americans who travelled from other states to the state of Nevada, where Las Vegas is, to watch the games. So people were willing to travel and spend money, not just the locals. So that's very, very interesting. So place your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you make of it? It's been a discussion point now for a good 6-7 weeks. It's not going away, and I think there will be an announcement in a few months' time in regards of the NRL investing in Super League and the World Cup Challenge being played in Vegas. Anyway, there we go. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.